Ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm here today to address the coming week and our concern over the potential for violence surrounding the election. I'm joined by Oregon State Police Superintendent Terry Davey, Multnomah County Sheriff Mike Reese, and Portland Police Bureau Chief Chuck Lavelle. Oregon National Guard Major General Mike Stencil, will be on the phone. We all know that election nights in the past have brought Oregonians together to exercise their rights to peacefully assemble and make their voices heard. Especially this year, there are unique dynamics at play that may create an environment ripe for a heated election day and post-election period. This year's election comes in the midst of a pandemic where record numbers of Americans are voting, and in new ways. We've all been preparing ourselves for the potential that it may take several days for election results to become official. This election also comes at a pivotal moment for Oregon, where the pandemic, wildfires, and political atmosphere have boosted fear and anxiety. We've seen firsthand what happens when free expression is fueled by hate. We know that there are some people who might want to use peaceful election night protests to promote violence and property destruction. That behavior is not acceptable, and it's not in line with our Oregon values of being an inclusive democracy. Every Oregonian has the right to express themselves freely and to peacefully assemble. However, I want to be very, very clear that voter intimidation and political violence will not be tolerated. Not from the left, not from the right, and not from the center. Not this week, not any week in Oregon. It's my goal as your governor to ensure the safety of all Oregonians, especially as they exercise their very fundamental right to vote and practice free speech. As such, I am exercising my authority to put the Superintendent of State Police, Terry Davey, and the Multnomah County Sheriff, Michael Reese, in charge of public safety in Portland this week. I have also directed General Stencil to call up our National Guard should their services be deemed necessary. This is our entire community coming together to protect Oregonians and ensure that every single eligible voter feels safe exercising their right to vote. I am using my executive authority to ensure the highest level of coordination and adequate resources and personnel. If you take one thing away from today's press conference, let it be this: violence is never the answer. We stand here today urging all Oregonians to commit to non-violent expression. We can all do our parts this week by staying calm, cool, and collected. With that, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
Thank you, Governor. Looks like we have a few people on the line, but not that many people in the question queue yet, so please go ahead and press 0 to enter the question queue. We'll start out with Lisa Balick from Coyne. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, first question, Governor, what exactly will the National Guard be able to do? Will they be out on the streets?
General Stencil, are you on the line?
I am. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. We've got a number of units that will be available on standby to assist in any riot and crowd control, traffic control, detention support, logistics, whatever may be needed or requested by Oregon State Police or local law enforcement. Just want to foot stomp that we are primarily, in a supporting role, and we're really there to augment those agencies in the event that we're needed.
Thanks, Lisa. Are you also, I have another Coyne reporter in the queue. Is that you as well, Lisa?
No, it's not.
Okay. We'll go to Elise from Coin.
Yes, thank you so much. So, Governor Brown, I'm wondering, why are we learning about all of this the day before the election? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry, we're working under COVID constraints, and I needed to come back into microphone territory. Look, our state, local, and community partners have been working on measures for this particular week for a number of weeks now. We've been partnering at the state level with our partners at Multnomah County and the City of Portland. Folks have been meeting on a daily basis preparing for this election week. Our goal here is to make sure that Oregonians are safe, that Oregonians can exercise their right to free speech, and that folks can vote safely and securely.
I guess I'm just wondering why the announcement didn't come sooner and why it's just the day before.
Look, folks have been preparing, as I said, for this week for a number of weeks. I feel confident that we have adequate resources on the ground with the signing of this executive order. We wanted to make sure that there was an adequate number of persons to assist and that we can keep the peace, that we can make sure that people can protest peacefully and that no further property destruction will occur.
Looks like we have a few people in the queue now. We'll go next to Tess Risky with Willamette Week. Go ahead, Tess.
Hi, this question I think is for Chief Lavelle. I'm wondering, will Portland police officers be able to use tear gas following the governor's executive order?
This is Chief Lavelle. The governor's executive order puts us under her control. So if need be, that tool will be available at the direction of Oregon State Police or Multnomah County Sheriff's Office.
I'm going to have Superintendent Davey respond to that as well.
And also, as the Oregon State Police, we do have that tool available to us when it is absolutely necessary. And given the situation that is unknown this week, and we do not know exactly what is going to transpire, we hope for a very peaceful election cycle and gathering peacefully in protest. And if it comes down to a decision must be made, it'll be under unified command with Sheriff Reese and myself and in consultation with Chuck Lavelle.
Thanks, Tess. We'll go next to Pat Duras with KGW. Go ahead, Pat.
Good morning. So a couple quick questions. One, I'm wondering, Governor, if this is historic. I can't remember the National Guard being called up or put on standby for an election in Oregon in the 30 years that I've been here. Also, I'm wondering what conditions would trigger the call-up of the National Guard, or are they going to just sort of be on the streets ready to go, and how many members should we expect? Thank you.
This is Superintendent Davey. As far as what the National Guard will be utilized for, it's still in the planning process. We do not know exactly what is going to transpire this week. As I said, we hope absolutely nothing. It'll be very peaceful protest and everybody exercising their right to freedom of speech. However, if in fact something is needed and the soldiers that do make up our Oregon National Guard are called upon, we will assess at that time where they're most needed. It could be over on a critical infrastructure as far as security. It could be crowd control. It could be escorting. It's a variety of things that they could be utilized for. As far as the number, it's going to be dependent. We have some called up for now, but if the number needs to be increased, then Major General Stencil will be the one to give us some guidance on the proper numbers we might need.
Already?
Pat, this is Governor Brown. I'm not able to answer that question. General Stencil is on the phone, and I think he can give you a general sense. But your first question is whether this is historic or not. I also can't answer that question, but what I can say is this. This is an election like no other in our lifetimes. I know that governors across the states are taking adequate measures to ensure that the law enforcement community has the resources that they need, that we have the people power that we need to keep our constituents safe. And again, I am urging Oregonians across the state to stay calm, cool, and collected. We know from prior elections that sometimes it takes a couple of days for the vote to be fully counted. That's not unusual here in Oregon. What is new for the country is that you have millions of Americans voting by mail for the first time, finally following Oregon's lead. And so it may take a few, if not several days, for the results to be fully known. In the meantime, we want to make sure that we have adequate resources on the ground to keep Oregonians safe, to allow people to exercise their right to free speech, and of course, at least for tomorrow, to ensure that people can vote safely and securely.
Thanks, Pat. Looks like we have quite a number of people in the queue now, so we'll go next to Gillian with the AP. Go ahead, Gillian.
Hi, Governor and everyone else. I was just wondering, previous protest plans have involved the federal deputation of state troopers and Portland police officers. I'm wondering if that is part of the plan in this instance, and what the negotiations have been surrounding that, given the past issues with that.
That is not part of the plan for this week.
All right, thank you. We'll go next to... Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. Do the next one.
All right, thank you. We'll go next to Maxine with the Oregonian. Go ahead, Maxine. With OPB. Go ahead, Dirk.
Yeah, thanks. A couple questions here. The first is, in the past when we saw this, it seems that OSP and MCSO participation was contingent on them being in the lead because they wanted the opportunity to use tear gas. Is that the case now? Is them being in the lead, is that the only reason they are agreeing to participate once again? And second, Governor, given that that does pave the way to tear gas, if needed, is that a tactic you support personally, if you know, MCSO or OSP deems it necessary?
Dirk, thank you for the question. This is Sheriff Mike Reese, and we appreciate the Governor's use of her executive authority to create a unified command. It allows all of the law enforcement agencies in Multnomah County to work collaboratively in alignment, certainty about what we're going to do, and to give us the resources necessary to keep the peace in our community. We want to use no force at all in this election process. Our goal, our overarching goal, is to keep the peace, to have a visible presence so that people can vote peacefully and engage in our democratic processes, and for us to support that. And the Governor's order to create a unified command is simply there to allow us to work in a collaboration and a model that was very successful on September 26th.
Sheriff, the question is, would your deputies be involved without this structure?
We've been planning with the Portland Police Bureau and the Oregon State Police for several weeks on responding to the potential for election violence, but also just to, again, keep the peace in our community, have a highly visible presence to ensure that people feel safe in voting and that there won't be any voter suppression or intimidation.
Yeah, but you didn't answer whether you would be involved without this structure.
As I said, yes, we've been working together for several weeks, and this allows us, again, to work in a unified command model that was very successful on September 26.
Thanks, Dirk. We've got a number of
Governor,
people
do you have an answer to that second part piece, though, Governor, about the use of tear gas and your personal opinion?
Thank you. I've been very, very clear. My goal in issuing this executive order is to make sure that the law enforcement community has the resources that they need and the people power that they need to keep Oregonians safe, to ensure that Oregonians can protest peacefully, both during and after the election, and to ensure that the elections can be held safely and securely. The Oregon State Police, as you are well aware, has the ability to use CS gas. They use it under extremely limited circumstances and use it in the situation to save lives and keep people safe. Law enforcement needs these tools at times to keep Oregonians safe and to protect property.
Thanks, Dirk. We've got a number of people waiting to ask questions here, so I'm going to move on. Maxine, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Governor, thank you for your time. I wanted to find out what coordination your officers, state police, sheriffs have had with federal officers, and also if there have been any specific threats of violence or complaints of voter intimidation in the state thus far.
Other than comments from the President of the United States discouraging Americans from voting by mail, I am not aware of threats and suppression happening throughout Oregon. I do know that students at our universities were concerned about the safety and security of vote by mail because of the President's comments. I find those extremely concerning, that the President of the United States would take active efforts to suppress the power of the vote and the power of Americans to exercise their very fundamental free speech right. I am not aware of specific instances happening in Oregon other than that.
Thanks, Maxine.
And Maxine, this is Superintendent Davey. I'd like to add on that the question you had asked about, are we in communication with federal officers? And the state police is a statewide agency, and we always have open lines of communication with the federal officers that we deal with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And so that has not changed for our agency.
Thanks, Maxine. We've got a written question here from Alex Zielinski with the Portland Mercury. Alex asks, what is the duration of OSP and the Sheriff's Office jurisdiction over Portland? When will it begin and when will it end?
Hello, this is Superintendent Davey again. As far as when it'll begin tonight at 5 p.m. and it runs for approximately 48 hours. And during that time period, on Wednesday afternoon, the governor can reassess the situation that Oregon is looking at specifically here in Multnomah County.
Thanks, Alex, for the question. We'll go next to Gary Warner with EO Media. Go ahead, Gary.
Yes, hi, Governor. Thanks for taking time this morning. We received a letter today from the Institute for Constitutional Advocacy and Protection at the Georgetown University Law Center that monitors militia activity, noting a incident over the weekend that occurred at Lively Park in Springfield at a voter ballot drop. I know that most of this activity you're talking about today is geared towards what might happen in Portland, but what's being done to ensure that there isn't intimidation of voters elsewhere in the state at this time?
So, Gary, this is Superintendent Davey again, and I can give you some information on that. I know since we have 36 counties here in Oregon, there are all different types of law enforcement agencies, county, local, and state that are involved in this topic. And you are correct, there was an incident down in Springfield over the weekend, and the local law enforcement is very aware of it, and they're working with the state police in that area, and so is the county. As far as what we're doing statewide, it's communication. It's preparation and planning to make sure that all the elections, county elections, are in communication with their law enforcement. I know that Sheriff Reese has been in constant communication here in Multnomah County to ensure that all the deputies and the police officers in the area understand where the drop boxes are, and to ensure that those that do use the drop boxes do feel safe when they do that.
I guess my question would be, being aware of an incident doesn't tell me really anything about what sort of action is being taken on these sort of things. Are you doing anything proactively out of concern for these sort of incidents?
Gary, this is Superintendent Davey again. I think the specific incident down in Springfield I'm not going to address today. However, what are we doing? A lot of it is through communication. It's the preparation and planning that goes into it to make sure that our officers, our deputies, and our troopers are aware of where the ballot locations are so that they can ensure that there is not issues of voter suppression occurring in those locations. And it's through communication, and if Sheriff Reese would also like to add to that on what he's done here locally, he can provide information.
Yeah, this is Mike Reese. Again, I think in Multnomah County, having deputies who can quickly respond to any criminal calls for service or voter intimidation or attempts to suppress the vote at ballot locations in Multnomah County is really critical to ensuring a safe democratic process. We've got deputy sheriffs who are out working throughout Multnomah County today, ready to respond to any calls at a ballot location, working with our elections office to ensure a safe process.
I guess the last question I would have is, what are the rules about open carry of long rifles and things like that in around voting areas? In Michigan, the governor there took some action to create a sort of a buffer zone. What is the law in Oregon about somebody showing up at a ballot box with an AR-15?
So this is Superintendent Davey again. As far as the laws in Oregon, open carry is allowed, and we also have the concealed handgun permits that people do have. As far as in each different jurisdiction, there are certain city ordinances that also have limitations put in place, and so each area of Oregon, there are a little bit nuances that are specific for that. But overall, our Governor Brown, has not put into place something that's similar to what you just quoted.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. We've got time for just 2 more questions. So we're going to go next to Nick Budnick with the Portland Tribune. Go ahead, Nick.
Hi, thanks very much for the opportunity. I am wondering if Superintendent Davey could provide more information about the role of federal deputized officers. I know there was a discussion that they're not part of the plans, but could we have more clarity on cooperation with federal prosecutors and police? And also, if you have time, a little more details on the deployment of National Guard. Thanks.
Absolutely, Nick. This is Superintendent Davey again. As far as the question, there are troopers and, as we know, other officers here in Portland, law enforcement officers, that have been deputized. What that is, it's just a designation. Our troopers are still out there doing their normal job every day that they normally do. Tonight we have our mobile response team coming to Portland. They will do what they normally do when they are here to assist Portland and Multnomah County. That does not change or deter any of their normal activities. What that designation really does, it's on the back end as far as prosecution guidelines. It's whether or not our district attorney here in Multnomah County, Mike Schmidt, determines that if a case does not meet prosecutorial guidelines, perhaps it maybe does in the federal area. That's the difference for that piece. But as far as their duties, they will remain what they always are. And if you're talking about how we interact with our federal partners have a mission also in Portland. There are numerous federal buildings that they are responsible for protecting, and that's their mission. That's different than the mission that we have here today. The mission that we had in August is not the same that we have today, to be here for Portland and Multnomah County to help and support. And if there's another part of that question, please let me know.
What are the criteria for deployment of the National Guard? Will they be authorized to use force, and at what time that would occur?
So, Nick, this is Superintendent Davey again. I think a lot of that will be in consultation with Major General Stencil on the line. But as far as when they'll be deployed, it's going to be dependent on the situation that we're in. We do not know what can transpire in the next couple days to the next week, and so we will evaluate it, and more likely than not, they are a support role. They are here to assist us potentially with infrastructure protection, perhaps on some type of perimeter security. That's our main area, is to assist us to allow law enforcement then to be readily available for more of interaction if there are individuals that are trying to create some type of unrest. It frees up the law enforcement to do our job. And General Stencil, I don't know if you have anything additional on that.
Not a lot to add, Superintendent. The bottom line, as you know, is we're there in a supporting role, and while we're always in a position to defend ourselves, we'll be looking to Oregon State Police, Sheriff's Office, and Portland Police Bureau to provide us any type of cover, since we will not be armed.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Nick. We've got time for one last question, so we're going to go to Brenna Kelly with KPTV. Go ahead, Brenna.
Hi, good morning. Last week, it was still unknown exactly how many officers would be prepared or on standby for crowd control, when at that point it was unclear who would be in charge of public safety. Now that we know that piece, how many law enforcement officers are on standby, and which agency will have the most that will be specifically responsible for public safety at elections protests?
This is Sheriff Mike Reese. Thank you for the question. Again, the governor's order allows us to bring a collaborative response to public safety in Multnomah County. So all law enforcement agencies, not just the three of us represented here, but our partners at Port of Portland Police and the Gresham Police Department will also be assisting in managing whatever events transpire in Multnomah County. I think that we'll have enough resources to have a highly visible presence to deter criminal activity and to ensure that people feel that their ability to vote is protected and that we have a safe and welcoming environment around our elections process.
Thanks, Brenna.
Number?
I don't think that we want to get into the specific number of officers or deputies or troopers that are going to be participating. Part of it will be dependent upon what happens in other parts of the state. State police have a responsibility for other jurisdictions as well. So if there are events that happen in other parts of the state, they may be sending resources there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brenna. That's all the time we have for questions today, folks, but thank you for joining us today.